Hello YouTube, ultramegamighty. Hey, you want to spend 30 hours with me while I go murder people and steal their wallets and jewelry until I find a 3-carat diamond ring, $542,000, and a pair of asbestos underwear? Well, I hope you're ready to do that anyway, because I just described half the gameplay of Diablo 2. Bet you never looked at the game that way before, did you? Today, I'm going to go through Diablo 2 and its expansion, Lord of Destruction, and I'm going to very likely say things about these games that a lot of people are going to disagree with. Feel free to disagree or even rage at me in the comments all you want, but at the very least, I want to get you really thinking about what these games really are. I'll tell you what I think that is at the end, but for now, let's start at the beginning. Or maybe a little before the beginning so we can have some nice tasty spoiler soup. Diablo is defeated at the end of Diablo. Fancy that. Despite that, things are still bad. Mainly because the warrior, one of the classes in the first game, decided it was a really fantastic good times idea to shove Diablo's soulstone into his forehead. Because reasons. While it isn't directly stated, it is implied that the other two playable characters, the rogue and the wizard, got demonically corrupted and went batshit crazy, respectively. So really only a few weeks have passed between the first and second games, but shit went south pretty damn quick in that time frame. Your chosen hero now gets to play catch-up in the vain hopes of stopping Diablo before he does anything. Spoiler! You fail spectacularly. Granted, there wouldn't be much of a story or a game without those failures, but it honestly made me feel more like I was being dragged through a story instead of being an active part of it. The game with the expansion is split into 5 acts, each one in a completely different area of the world, offering vastly more diversity with environments than the first game. There are 27 quests throughout the game, but only 9 of them are actually required to beat the game, and a few others just happen to be tied to some of those 9, making them feel unnecessary. The rest don't advance the story at all, and the ones that do advance the story made me feel like all the fighting was for nothing. It really makes the game feel a bit padded with fluff to me. They had lots of different areas to work with, and I fully believe they could have made a lot more of the quests really feel like they matter. Might have helped the narrative a bit. Really, it just feels like you don't actually accomplish anything until you beat the whole game, and even then, it's a bittersweet victory. You're always 2 or 3 steps behind the bad guys, and even the minor wins are just that, minor. And some of the main quests are just so damn long. Let me give you the absolute briefest run-through of one. To get to the boss of Act 2, first go to this tomb and get this thing. Then go into this gross cave and get a staff. Then go into this other tomb and get an amulet that conveniently finishes another quest. Then use the thing you got in the first tomb to make the staff and amulet into a new staff. Then go into the palace to get to this crazy place in space, but not. Go through it to find a book and also conveniently kill a guy that's in the way for another convenient quest. See a pattern here? Then use the symbols there to figure out where the real tomb is. Clear all 6 fake ones anyway for better loot. Then go through the real one to get your ass kicked by the hardest boss in the game that you're totally not ready for. And after all that, you're still 2 steps behind the bad guys, and it's no fucking wonder why. This is how fun games are made! And there's another quest chain just like this one in Act 3. Why would you do this? On top of all that, some of the plot points involved in these quests are ridiculous. Why wouldn't the one guy who very likely should know the symbol for the true tomb not know it? Why would the only entrance to the canyon the tombs are in be in some crazy space land made up by a batshit crazy hermit mage? If you intended to keep a super powerful demon lord sealed forever, why would you make a staff that was basically a key to his door? Why would you break the staff into pieces, but then make an item that could magically transmute the pieces back into the staff? Why not just bury that asshole in the fucking desert as deep as you can possibly dig, and never even build a damn door? For such smart mages, those guys were fucking stupid. But long, painful, masochistic quests are nothing without masochistic characters to inflict their pain upon. Unlike the 3 you're limited to in the first game, this game with the expansion added gives you a total of 7 character classes to choose from.
Good day.
I chose the Necromancer because with the right build, they do quite well in Nightmare and Hell difficulties. More on that in a bit, but let me draw your short attention span back to the words right build. See, in the first game, all you really had to manage were your ability scores. In this one, you have to manage those, as well as a fairly large skill tree with a very diverse set of skills for each class. That sounds great, right up until you experience it. You get a single skill point every time you level up to spend however you want. It's fine at first, but I'd wager a good load of first-time players will end up putting points into all kinds of different skills to try them out and do all kinds of nifty badass things. Except you won't be doing badass things because all those nifty skills with only a point or two in them start to suck pretty hard pretty damn fast. You can make it through normal mode with an unplanned, chaotic build like this. It's not easy, but it's definitely doable. Nightmare and Hell modes are where you really pay for it, though. A lot of skills have synergy bonuses with other skills, encouraging you to spend points in a few skills to give them massive boosts. You'll need those boosts going into the higher difficulties to be able to do the kind of damage required to put down even the lowest level zombies. And when the game was new, there was no way outside of hacking your character to change your skill setup. So if you had a build that sucked, that was it. It just sucked. And you had to start completely over to redo it. They added a way to reallocate your ability and skill points in the very last patch made for the game, but that was way too damn late. That was just straight up a dick move. Forcing players to commit to a system they very likely won't understand on the first go with no way to alter it and not fixing that in any way until a patch is released years after the game is 5 kinds of old news is just a gigantic fuck you to new players. And even with veteran players, there's a very short list of builds that are actually viable all the way to the end of Hell difficulty, meaning that your real list of options is very short. You simply can't build a character the way you want and expect it to survive. And many of those builds are heavily gear dependent. You need at least a handful of specific things backing you up, or the build ends up being maybe about 30 to 50% less powerful than it needs to be. And that mess leads directly into the other part of the problem with this setup. The loot system. The loot system in this game is about as pleasant as horse dick sandwiches and twice as smelly. That's not a real thing, but I guarantee you it's fucking horrible. Like every other RPG out there that I can think of, this one relies not just on your magical skills, but also very heavily on the stuff you're wearing. In the early game, that stuff sucks. That's understandable. It's the early game. By the end of normal mode, most of it still sucks. See, to get the moderately decent stuff, you need to do something we call farming. You need to go back to places you've been before and kill things in it over and over and over and over and over and over. You know, I'd like to keep going, but I'd also like my viewers to retain their sanity, so just understand that you have to do this a lot. A hell of a lot. You'll very likely gain some levels out of this too. By the time you get back to the point where you were having trouble, you'll be a little stronger, and very likely in almost entirely the same gear you were in before after giving up on farming, because it's so damn boring. I mean, I don't expect the game to just drop all the best shit out of its ass all over my character and make me a god, but I should at least be able to get decent stuff at a decent enough rate that the game is fun. Hey, Blizzard, you know what fun is, right? You remember fun? Something like the, gameplay aspect that the Warcraft series had before you made a world out of it? Well, you're sucking it right out of this game through its left nipple. I am not a farmer. I do not wish to be a farmer. I do not wish to simulate being a farmer in any capacity.
Thank you.
I would rather come to your offices and punch every single one of you in the dick until someone drops a unique scythe. And I'm sure that particular event has about the same chance of happening as getting one in the game does. And I know I'm focusing really hard on the skills and the loot and not so much on everything else, but really this whole game very quickly becomes just as much a chore to play as it is fun. Now, it is somewhat fun, but not in the same way that, say, Mega Man or a Mario game are fun. It's more like a cocktail party, and you're the only designated driver, and you keep going back to the bar trying to get a Dr. Pepper, but the bartender keeps serving you random drinks that you didn't ask for, all while telling you to stay a while and listen, while all your friends are getting shit-faced around you. I do get it, though. This kind of gameplay is addicting. It really is. And it's hard not to get suckered in, because there's always that shiny new piece of gear waiting on that one boss's loot table with a 0.00000000035% chance of dropping that you really need to complete the set you're working on. But at least at its core, it's still got solid gameplay mechanics, a decent story despite quite a few dirt moments, and just enough fun to keep you interested. And the expansion pack really helps, as it delivers very well on that front. It does what any good expansion should. It takes what you have and makes it better. I won't go into too much detail on that, or really any at all, it's been out long enough. It would take a bit longer than I really have for this particular video, but it's good. We'll leave it at that. Diablo 2, with its expansions, still make for a really solid dungeon crawler, but it's also one I would recommend playing with someone you know. While the game is still pretty good, it's just so much better having someone there with you, making it more fun to help mitigate the game's shortcomings. That and extra players increase the chances of good loot dropping. Of course, you could always do what I had to resort to in the end. Enter a command into the game's chat box that makes it behave like there are more players, even though there aren't. And keep all that shiny loot for yourself. Give this one a go if you love a good dungeon crawler and don't mind farming for loot, because there's always a new magical sword waiting inside the next impish demon too small to carry it. See you next game. Oh, and in case you're wondering from way back at the start of the video when I said I was going to tell you what I thought Diablo 2 really was, to sum up, think, to make another game reference, think Castlevania 2, except whenever you want the enemies to drop the hearts that you need to buy the items that you need to progress in the game, you have to win a hand of poker. Just stew on that for a bit. Still good. Still a good game. But, yeah. There it is. That's what I think. Okay. That's it. For reals.